The Shroud of Turin recently had another discovery when people were doing some examinations on it, and this proves that Jesus did exist. So make sure to watch till the end so you know how to answer these questions. Let's get right into it.
Is this the face of Jesus Christ? According to a new scientific investigation into the Shroud of Turin, the answer is shocking everyone. I'm Dr. Steve, your patron professor, and we're going to see the latest bombshell investigation into the authenticity of one of the most sacred yet controversial Christian artifacts in the world. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's dive right in. The Shroud of Turin. It is, without question, the most sacred and controversial pieces of cloth on the planet. For some, it's a mere hoax. For others, it is nothing less than a testament to the transformative life, death, and resurrection of Christ. But the conclusions from a recent scientific study are shocking even the most ardent skeptics. Scientists from the Institute of Crystallography of the National Research Council applied what's called a wide-angle X-ray technique to study 8 small samples of fabric from the shroud. The technique enables researchers to actually examine the garment at a microscopic level, enabling them to determine the time the shroud was actually manufactured. The results of the X-ray examination were astounding. Scientists have confirmed that the shroud was indeed manufactured approximately 2,000 years ago.
Wow. So they did discover that it was 2,000 years ago around the same time. That's insane. Let's continue to watch.
The rather infamous 1988 study that used carbon dating to locate the origin of the shroud to the medieval period, over 1,000 years after the time of Christ. And that, in many respects, closed the case for many skeptics with regard to the authenticity of the shroud. But few realize that that carbon dating was in many respects disproved by a Russian scientist a few years later. We have to remember that the shroud has survived a couple of fires, which is itself miraculous. And this Russian scientist theorized that the intense heat caused isotopic discharges from the silver, wood, and other materials in the shroud's container, so as to affect the molecules of the shroud. And so it wasn't the cloth that dated back to the medieval period, but rather the container in which the cloth was stored that dates back to such a period. And so a number of dating tests since 1988 have concluded that the shroud originated approximately right around the time of Christ in the 1st century AD. And this latest study, looking at the shroud at the microscopic level, appears to have conclusively confirmed precisely that date. Now, this microscopic study is actually but the latest in a whole string of studies that collectively do appear to authenticate the shroud. For example, another study from a few years back confirmed that the blood stains on the shroud were in fact human blood. And most fascinatingly, it was the blood of a torture victim. It was a study conducted by Italy's National Research Council and the University of Padua's Department of Industrial Engineering. That study concluded that the man wrapped in the Shroud of Turin suffered a strong, what they called polytrauma, or multiple traumatic injuries. The research was published in a peer-reviewed...
They said that the blood of the victim on the Shroud of Turin was a victim of intense torture. That's insane, crazy.
Academic journal. It made quite the stir in the academy. And what's so interesting here is that the conclusions of this study corroborate earlier ones that did in fact conclude that the remnant stains in the shroud were in fact human blood. We have multiple studies that do confirm that. In fact, when I was in the academy, I had a student of mine who did her research thesis on the topic of the Shroud of Turin, and she pointed out in her research that previous studies determined that the blood on the shroud is in fact real. It's human male blood of the type AB. It's a rare blood type, present in only about 3% of the world's population. And these studies found a high concentration of the pigment bilirubin, which is consistent of someone dying under great trauma or stress. And what this latest study found, this one from a few years back, was that the blood of the victim exemplifies a high degree not merely of trauma, but of multiple traumatic injuries, such as to the head, torso, wrists, legs, feet. The blood in this current study found nanoparticles of a very particular structure, size, and distribution, which are not typical for the blood of a healthy person, but rather contain levels of creatinine and ferritin found in patients who endured multiple violent traumas, such as in the case with torture. So now we have a study at the micro level that's confirmed the shroud was manufactured during the time of Christ, 2,000 years ago. And we have multiple studies confirming that the blood splotches on the garment were indeed human and that they exemplified an extremely violent death. But there's something even more astonishing here when it comes to the shroud, something that's going to absolutely blow your mind. This is the San Salvador Cathedral in Oviedo, Spain. This cathedral houses a relic known as the Sudarium Christi, the face cloth of Christ. John chapter 20, verse 7 mentions a faith cloth, a sudarium, that was originally wrapped around the head of Christ, but was found neatly folded in a place of its own in Christ's empty tomb. The Sudarium Christi is a linen cloth that doesn't have an image on it, but it does have blood stains that appear around where the eyes of the victim would have been. And astonishingly, scientists have confirmed that the blood splotches on the Sudarium match the same blood chemistry found on the Shroud of Turin in Italy.
No
in other words,
way.
the blood...
That's crazy. The same blood found on this cloth is the same blood on the Shroud of Turin. Absolutely insane. Wow, mind blown.
The shroud and the blood on the Sudarium, or face cloth, came from the same victim. But again, the evidence gets even more astonishing. The Shroud of Turin has also been found to have pollen particles that are specific to the area of Jerusalem, and amazingly found only at the beginning of springtime, say in late March, which would have been the time of the Passover when Christ was crucified. It's no wonder that my student concluded that with the dating of the cloth to the 1st century, its proximity to Jerusalem via the pollen particle testing, and the human blood revealing a figure who suffered trauma like that suffered by Jesus of Nazareth in his crucifixion, she concluded that the image of the Shroud of Turin is in fact the face of Jesus Christ. So the Shroud of Turin continues to be one of the most mysterious, perplexing, and indeed fascinating enigmas of our time.
That's absolutely insane. Imagine if that is actually the face of Jesus, and how maybe God just preserved that so that people could know more about him. Crazy, so cool. I want to know your comments down below, what you think about this, because do you think it's real? Do you think it's a hoax? Do you think this actually happened? Is this actual evidence for Jesus? Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Now, please like this video and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. I hope you all have an amazing day. And also, you might like this video here. Peace.